Is there a better sweet treat during the holidays than a soft, frosted sugar cookie decorated in holiday fashion? This sugar cookie recipe has been in my husband's family for generations. It is by far our favorite sugar cookie. Not because it's a family recipe, but because in addition to the usual ingredients, this recipe contains cream cheese and almond extract, giving the cookies a soft, rich texture with a flavorful punch. I've been making these cookies every year for several decades now and just can't seem to get enough of them. I can't wait to share this generational family recipe with you. We don't know exactly where this recipe originated, but the original recipe calls for oleo, also known as margarine. Oleo, the antiquated name for margarine, is shortened from the French word oleo-margarine, created by French chemist Hippolyte Maugier, and that was in 1869. He won a contest held by Emperor Napoleon III to combat the butter shortage. It became very popular during wartime as a cheap butter substitute. Today, it can still be found in some grocery stores, but you mostly only see it listed as oleo in old recipes from our grandmother's generation or older. If you have a family recipe with oleo as an ingredient, don't fret. Just use margarine or butter as a substitute. And that's what we're using today. For the cookie ingredients, you'll need butter or oleo or margarine, cream cheese, granulated sugar, 1 egg, vanilla extract, almond extract, all-purpose flour, salt, and baking powder. In addition, the frosting and topping ingredients also include powdered sugar, milk, food coloring, and holiday sprinkles or other edible decor. The cookie dough is best made the day before you want to bake the cookies because the dough needs to chill for at least a few hours overnight. You can leave the dough in the fridge for up to 3 days. Or you can freeze the dough, thaw in the fridge for later use. The easiest part of making these cookies is mixing the ingredients, particularly if you have a stand mixer. If not, you can stir the ingredients using a large bowl and a spoon or an electric hand mixer. To a stand mixer bowl or large bowl, we're going to add 226 grams, which is 2 sticks or 8 ounces of softened butter. I'm using salted butter here because salt enhances the sweetness and this recipe does not call for salt. So we want to have it somewhere. Use the paddle attachment or an electric mixer and blend until the butter is soft and creamy. Then we're going to add 1 package of cream cheese, which is 226 grams or 8 ounces. This should be softened cream cheese, and you'll notice we have equal amounts of cream cheese and butter. Lots of richness is going into these cookies. We're going to mix again until combined and creamy. Add 300 grams, which is 1.5 cups of granulated sugar, and then mix again until fluffy. Check out how soft that is. Now that's a fluffy, creamy mixture. We're going to crack 1 egg separately into a small bowl to avoid any shells that may break and end up in our egg, or any bad egg that we could potentially have. And pour that into our butter mixture. We're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla and 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract. Mix again until the ingredients are combined. In a separate medium bowl, we're going to add 420 grams, which is 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and 4 grams, 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Give those 2 ingredients a quick stir just so that they're combined when we add them to our wet mixture. With the machine on low, slowly add in your flour and baking powder mixture, allowing time for the butter to soak up the flour. And then you're just going to continue to run the machine until all of your flour is mixed in. You want to stop at least once and then just scrape down the sides of your bowl. Ensure that the bottom doesn't have any extra flour hanging out. Notice we have a soft, sticky cookie dough. So we're going to cover the dough and stick it in the fridge. Now this is a pretty tall bowl for me, so I'm actually going to transfer this dough to a smaller, more manageable bowl for me to put in my fridge. Now you see why we have to refrigerate this dough overnight, because there is no way we're going to roll out this sticky dough as it is right now. Regardless of where you place your dough, cover it well. You're going to place it in the fridge overnight up to 3 days before you can roll, cut, and bake your cookies. The day you're ready to roll, cut, and bake your dough into cookies, remove the dough from the fridge, and you'll notice it is a very firm dough. It is like almost hard as a rock trying to pull it out of the bowl. Super firm. So I suggest what works for me is take it out of the fridge, leave it on the counter for about 10 or 15 minutes before rolling it. It softens fairly quickly. In fact, if you start to manipulate it, you can see how it's already starting to soften. And of course, that's the cream cheese. That's what's creating all that softness. So just let it sit for a few minutes. So in the meantime, go ahead and preheat your oven to 375 degrees. And then you're going to line 2 baking sheets here with parchment paper or silicone mats for an easy cleanup, and then just set those aside. And pretty quickly after taking your dough out of the refrigerator, you can go ahead and start to roll it out, shape it. And the more you touch it, the warmth of your hands will actually warm it up so that it softens, so it doesn't take long. And then I flour and sugar my work surface whenever I'm rolling out cookies or something sweet, because the flour will of course keep the dough from sticking. The sugar gives it a little bit of sparkle on the outside, and it also caramelizes it a bit and gives it a little bit of height so it doesn't stick to the surface, and it gives it that sugary exterior. I always divide it in half because it's just easier to manage it. So you can tear it like that and then put it aside, 1/2 aside. It doesn't have to be perfect, just whatever you cut it in half to. And then of course, I like to massage it just a little bit in my hands just to start to flatten it out, get a kind of a rough, flattened surface before we begin actually rolling it. And then just start rolling out your dough, keeping that surface floured, a little bit of sugar, just to keep the dough from sticking, particularly when we are flattening it out and we need to cut out. We don't want the dough to stick to the surface. We're gonna roll this dough to about 1/8 to 1/4 inch thick. Lift up your dough once in a while, add that flour. Depending on the holiday, you could use whatever shaped cookie cutters you like or have. Since I make these at Christmas time, I'm using Christmas cookie cutters. So I have a snowman, a stocking, a Christmas tree, and a candy cane. I have used hearts for Valentine's Day. I've used sports theme for summer. It's just whatever you want to use and whatever the season is. Then you stamp out your cookies and notice how easily they come out. So this is about the thickness that I prefer. As you stamp them out, just place them on your cookie sheet, and you want to place them about 1 inch apart. And then just keep stamping out your cookies. Once you have one pan filled, you're going to place the cookies in the oven and bake for 8 to 10 minutes until the tops are set. We don't want these cookies to be crunchy, we want them to be soft. As they're cooking, I just go ahead and continue cutting out the remainder of my cookies and placing them on the second baking sheet. So baking them one at a time, I prefer to do that because the cookies bake more evenly. So you can bake one batch of these cookies using that one dough half and then place the other dough half in the fridge to bake at a later date, or if it's going to be a longer period of time between the time you make the dough and the 3 or 4 days, then you want to put it in the freezer. If you place the dough in the freezer, let it thaw overnight in the fridge so that you can roll them out the next day. Once you've been able to get all the cookies that you can out of that first roll, gather up the scraps, then just roll the dough out. So you notice how soft it is now once it's been at room temperature for a bit. Keep your surface floured and sugared. Roll it back out to that desired thickness, and then continue to cut out your cookies. Have one batch of cookies coming out and another batch going in the oven, and I'm still cutting out cookies. We're gonna let these cookies cool for 2 minutes on their baking sheet. And then we just transfer them to a cooling rack. Notice they're still pale. This is the preferred sugar cookie for me, barely touching that color brown on the back side. But they're obviously done. I mean, look, they've just been sitting on the pan for 2 minutes and they're not even flimsy, so they're cooked through. We'll continue adding cookie dough to this pan. Once the cookies are all baked and cooled, you can leave them as they are, looking just like this, or you can decorate them, and that's what we're gonna do right now. Since it's the holidays, let's put forth a little extra effort. So to do that, you can make frosting. You can make one color or many colors. In fact, you can use cake frosting purchased from the grocery store if you wanted to do the homemade cookie but use the store-bought frosting because it's a little easier. But if not, this is how you would do a homemade version. And this is the recipe that was, of course, passed down in the family. So regardless of the color, the recipe is virtually the same. So to a small bowl, we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of butter, just like that. And I'm gonna go ahead and add 1 teaspoon of milk. Now this was not in the way the recipe was written, but this is what I found to be easier over time, is that I find that the melted butter mixes much better and easier with the powdered sugar than when it's a solid butter or even softened butter. So the recipe doesn't call for putting it in the microwave, but this is what works for me. And melting them two together, it takes about 20 seconds. So I did 10 seconds, stir, and then another 10 seconds, and totally melted. So and the reason why I melted the milk too is because as soon as you melt the butter and then you add something cold, it's gonna start to solidify the butter. So if we mix the butter in with a little bit of milk and heat them together, it's not gonna solidify quite as quick. So this is to make one color. So I'm gonna make 3 colors. I'm gonna do a red and a green and a white, but I'm gonna show you the white all in so you can see what it looks like. And what all you need is 120 grams, which is 1 cup of powdered sugar. And you're gonna add that to your melted butter and milk. And we're gonna add 1/8 of a teaspoon, which is not a lot, but it's enough to taste it. And this is almond extract. You can leave it out if you don't like almond extract, but I highly recommend it. And then go ahead and start stirring what little liquid that you have in your bowl with the powdered sugar. Now there is a fine line where you stop adding liquid to get to the consistency that you want. You may only need 1 or 2 more teaspoons of milk and that is it. But always stir between additions, that way it doesn't become too runny. And if so, you just have to add more powdered sugar, but it's harder to do that because you end up having to add more powdered sugar than you really want. Okay, obviously we need to add some more liquid here. Okay, so now you can see that the powdered sugar and butter are just sort of a crumbly mixture. So now you can start adding the cold milk because we have enough of the liquid in there to mix up that it's okay to add a little bit of cold. So then you want to do just 1 teaspoon at a time. And yes, I said teaspoon, not tablespoon. We want this consistency to be a spreadable consistency, but not a runny consistency. If it's too runny, it's just going to run off your cookie. I've had plenty of frosting where I made it too runny. So you just have to find that sweet spot that you're happy with. Okay, now it looks like a dough, so let's add another teaspoon. And I'm just using the back of my spoon to mix it up. You could use a whisk too. Okay, so notice we have a big change from that previous teaspoon. So it's starting to really become that spreadable consistency. I still think it's a little bit too thick, so I'm gonna add a little bit more milk, and I probably won't even add a full teaspoon. That was 3½ teaspoons, and that's the consistency that we have. So I'm gonna go with that. If I find it's too thick, I'll just add more milk. Okay, I'm gonna make another color. So that's your standard white frosting. We're gonna do the same thing, and then we're just gonna add food coloring to it. When you're ready to make your colored frosting, you just repeat the same steps with the white, and then I did the exact same thing as I did before. And then you're gonna add whatever food coloring you want. We're gonna add green here. So you might need just to add a couple drops, stir and see if you like the color or not. And then add more as needed. You can go as light as mint green. That was just 3 or 4 drops there. So all 3 of my colors are ready. So this is the color green I decided to go with, and that was quite a few gel drops is what I used. And then the red is, again, it's a gel red. I've used regular food coloring, the liquid kind, and it does the same thing. So that's what my red is gonna look like. And then we have the white. So stir them occasionally because they start to harden. And if it takes you a long time to get to the cookies and you're finding it that your frosting is hardening a little bit quicker than you want, add just a little bit more milk. And then all you need to do is you can just take a spoon. I'm gonna use the back of the spoon, and then you just frost your cookie however much you want. Notice there's not too much milk in here so that it doesn't slide off the cookie, and you can just spread it around. So this is a good frosting. It's good flavory too because you got a little bit of butter and you have the almond extract. Then you can add whatever. If you have sprinkles, I've got snowflakes and little trees and these little berries. I like the sprinkles. We'll add some of the sprinkles. Whole cookie, you can sprinkle all over the top or whatever design that you want. And there you are. It's easier to decorate your cookies when they're sitting on top of a cookie sheet so that whatever falls, it'll fall into the cookie sheet and not all over your floor or your table. So there you go. That's how you would decorate the cookies. So here's a sample of a cookie platter with our decorated sugar cookies. And I also wanted to show you one that wasn't decorated so we can look at it a little closer. Remember when I said it's great to put a cookie sheet under where you're decorating your cookies? Because look at that. None of that went into the floor or on my table. All of it's contained in a little space here. Okay, so what I love about these sugar cookies is that because they have cream cheese in them, that they're not going to darken that much. I love the light color back, light colored front. They stay really, really pretty, and they are completely cooked. They have nice crumb on the inside. They're soft. They're not in any way snappy or crispy. They're just a great little sugar cookie. I prefer actually to bake these for a little bit under the 8 minutes, so I usually go between 7 and 8. So a cookie that was 10 minutes is definitely going to have some darkening on the back, even though they're still pale. But they're almost crispy. So if you want a really soft cookie, go 7-8 minutes on your baking time. And then this is one that's actually, this was the first one we did. So once they dry, then you can touch them, you can give them away. They should be fine for holding in your hand and not being ooey gooey. So that's a soft one. I like that one. The frosting has solidified. It keeps the topping, the edibles on the frosting for the most part. And it's just a good all-around sugar cookie. Okay, I'm gonna take a bite of the broken one that I already took apart. That was the candy cane. It's a soft and tender cookie, thanks to the cream cheese. The almond extract takes the flavor sort of over the top. I love that almond. It's not too strong, but it just adds so much of this, just a flavor you might not think about. The frosting is sweet and complements the cream cheese butter base. That's a good cookie. It is such a treat for me to make and eat these once a year, and that's all I can do. Store these cookies at room temperature for up to several days. Once they're frosted, like mine are here, place wax paper between them. So I would actually put a sheet of wax paper on top of this if I wanted to store this like this, and then add cookies to it. Then once you prepare them, you can gift these to family and friends for the holidays and/or add them to your holiday cookie platter like I did. This batch of cookies makes a lot, so you have plenty to share. I really hope you give these a try and get your kiddos involved. These cookies are so much more enjoyable to make when you have family and friends to help you frost and decorate them. I'm not kidding when I say these are our favorite sugar cookies. The cream cheese and almond extract make, for us at least, a perfect bite of sweetness. Thanks for allowing me to share a family recipe. We wish you and yours a very happy holiday season. Until next time, go bake a batch of sugar cookies, enjoy a sugar coma, and then go bake the world.